Welcome back to the FFS podcast for finance's sake. This episode is Budget 2025. Don't worry, it's just a light mugging. This is the only finance show where an accountant gets to say exactly what they're thinking and occasionally shout into the void. I'm your host, Rachel Chadwick-Harrison, MD of an accountancy firm in beautiful Warwickshire, lover of numbers and full-time spotter of government nonsense. Now, unless you've been living under a tax-free rock, you'll know the government finally dropped their autumn budget. Yes, in November. Late, lumpy, not great. They spent weeks preparing us for a hurricane. So when it turned out just to be heavy rain and a bit of wind, we're meant to be grateful. But let me tell you, just because it didn't blow the house away, didn't mean it didn't steal your wallet. So today, we're unpacking the headlines, the hidden traps, the pension punches, the electric car chaos, and why this budget might actually be a masterclass in how to mug you with a smile. Let's start with the big lie. No, not that one, the other one. They stood there with a straight face and said, there's no increase in VAT, no increase in income tax, and no increase in NI. And whilst they haven't bumped the headline rates, they've done something far more sneakier. So they've frozen the personal tax thresholds again. That's right, again. These thresholds have been stuck since 2021 and now they'll stay frozen until 2028. That's 7 years where wages have gone up, inflation has soared and your tax-free allowance hasn't moved an inch. To put it bluntly, the personal tax allowance should be around $14,700 if it kept up with inflation. Instead, it's stuck at $12,570. That's over £2,000 worth of income you're now getting taxed on that you wouldn't be if they'd done the right thing. So yes, it is a tax rise, a big one. They just don't print it on the leaflet. This is what we call fiscal drag. It's dragging everyone down. It hits the working person hardest. Your pay goes up to match the rising cost of living and boom, you're in a higher tax band. It's economic gaslighting at its finest. Now, whilst they're quietly picking your pocket, they're also fiddling with pensions. From 2026, employers will pay NI on any salary sacrifice pension contributions over £2,000 per employee per year. And just to boot that, the employees will also pay that. Now, this salary sacrifice scheme has been a vital tool both for saving tax and helping people invest in their retirement. It's been a huge incentive for employers to offer decent pension packages. But now, that's a hell of a lot of admin and expense. The message is clear. Save for your future if you want, but we're taking a cut. Employers will start questioning if it's even worth offering salary sacrifice anymore. And once that goes, so does a piece of long-term financial planning. And that theme continues. They've announced now that apprentices aged under 25 will have no course contribution required from small-medium enterprises. It's a headline that sounds generous, but right behind it is a massive hike in the apprenticeship rate that you have to pay them, up to £8 an hour. And the national living wage is also going up to £12.71. So on paper, it looks like support. In practice, you're still paying more. The cost of employment just went up again. And what happens when businesses are forced to pay more? They pass it on. Prices go up. That 8.5% increase to wages turns into a 10% increase at the till. So the guy earning minimum wage is still worse off because his bread and milk now cost more. It's a cycle, a false economy. And while we're watching that spin, they're shifting our investment habits too. They want us off property and pensions and into stocks and shares. That is the headline message here. They've capped the cash ISA limit at £12,000. The rest has to go into stocks. So we're still allowed our 20 grand tax-free, but £8,000 of it has to go into stocks. They've scrapped stamp duty on UK shares for 3 years. It's all very much go invest, be like America. And we have been very different from our friends across the Atlantic. The Americans are generally better off with their household income than we are here in the UK. And that is because over the last 20, 30 years, they have invested in stocks and we haven't. But for most Brits, stocks just aren't that first port of call. We invest in property, we save, we build businesses. This is the British culture. And what's happening to these people? Taxes on property profits, savings and dividends. all going up by 2% from 2026. You've got employee ownership trust relief getting chopped from 100% to 50%. These aren't small tweaks. They are telling entrepreneurs and savers, this system isn't for you anymore. And then comes the electric car move. I laughed out loud at this one. So going forwards, battery EVs will be taxed at 3p per mile. Hybrids will be taxed at 1.5p per mile. So the government that told you to buy electric, put loads of incentives in place for, now wants to charge you for using them. It's not just a green tax, it's policy contradiction. And how are they going to monitor this? MOT logs? Odometer photos? Are we all going to submit mileage diaries with our self-assessments? It's absolutely absurd. And they've said they're going to invest more in the electric infrastructure and get grants out to help, electric ports and things. Why are you investing in that? You've just demotivated anybody from buying an electric car. So it fits the theme, doesn't it? If it moves, tax it. And that leads us onto the social welfare side where things get even messier. The 2-child benefit cap has been lifted, which, look, on paper, yeah, great, more support for bigger families, but let's be real. How do we make sure this money actually goes to the children? Because my fear is that this becomes another excuse for people not to go back to work. A bit of extra cash, no strings, no checks, and suddenly it's Temu hauls and custom-free parcels instead of food, school, shoes or childcare. And speaking of customs duty, why are we waiting till 2029 to enforce it on imported parcels? That's 4 more years of tax leakage on fast fashion and impulse buys. We're giving away benefits whilst failing to police the borders of our digital economy. It's madness. Elsewhere, the mansion tax lands. £2,500 a year if your home is worth 2 million or more. Honestly, I don't hate it. We need the revenue. But brace yourself for the wave of valuation disputes. Everyone's going to suddenly discover their house is only worth 1.9 million. Writing down allowances have been trimmed to 14% from 18%. And sure, that won't hit too many of my SME clients directly. Most use the annual investment allowance anyway, but it's another sign the easy wins for businesses are vanishing. The first year investment allowance gets bumped to 40%, supposedly to drive growth. But let's be honest, most SMEs don't even know what they need in year one. They're still figuring out how to send an invoice. They won't benefit from this. It's a gesture that looks good in a speech but means very little on the ground. And that's the whole budget really. A series of gestures, moves that sound good if you don't look too closely. But the second you do, you see the real pattern. Spend how they want, save where they tell you, drive what they tax, and whatever you build, they will take a cut. So if you're a client, a saver, an employer, or just someone trying to make sense of all this, know this isn't support, it's control. Economic behavioural nudging wrapped in press release polish. Speak to your accountant, preferably one who swears on a podcast. So until next time, FFS, for finance's sake, check the numbers or check the nonsense from the government.